The city never truly slept. Even at midnight, Chicago hummed sirens in the distance, trains rumbling on rusted tracks, neon lights flickering in bars below. From the 12th floor of a worn-out apartment building, the noise felt like a storm sealed behind glass. Inside, Elena Carter sat at the dining table with her laptop open, legal files stacked high around her. Her face was lit by the cold glow of the screen, her jaw tight with determination. For her clients, the voiceless, the forgotten she was fierce, unyielding. But in the hollow quiet of her home, her strength was a mask stretched thin. In the bedroom, Amelia's voice carried, reading aloud from a storybook. Her 10-year-old tone was serious, exaggerated for Noah's amusement. The 6-year-old giggled, kicking his feet under the blanket. Their laughter was the one sound Elena let soften her expression. Then came the knock. 3 steady raps at the door. Elena froze. Few people visited this late. Her pulse quickened. She rose, crossed the small living room, and opened the door. Ryan Carter stood there. His once commanding presence was weathered. The sharp suit jackets had been replaced by a frayed coat, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion, his hands shoved deep into his pockets as if anchoring himself. He looked older, worn down not by years alone, but by choices. "Elena," he rasped, voice cracking. "I need to see them." Elena's grip tightened on the doorframe. The sight of him stirred everything she had buried: love, betrayal, anger. Her walls slammed up. "You don't get to walk in here," she said flatly. Ryan's shoulders sagged. "Please, just 5 minutes. I'll sit across the room if you want. I just need to see them." From behind Elena, Amelia peeked out, wide-eyed. Her gaze lingered on her father, but she said nothing. She simply stepped back, clutching Noah's hand tighter. Elena's voice cut like glass. "You don't belong here anymore, Ryan. Not after what you did." Ryan's lips parted, as though 1,000 words fought to escape, but none made it past his throat. Finally, he whispered, "I never stopped loving them. Or you." Elena slammed the door. On the other side, Ryan stood motionless, forehead pressed to the cold wood, his breath fogging in the hallway light. Inside, Elena leaned against the door, trembling. Her children's muffled laughter had faded. In its place was silence thick enough to choke her. And for the first time in years, the cracks in her glass walls began to tremble. Ryan didn't move for a long while. The hallway stretched behind him, dimly lit, smelling of damp carpet and old paint. Every instinct screamed to knock again, to beg, to shout until Elena let him in. But he knew her walls, built from pain, reinforced by years of silence. Words wouldn't break them. He turned, pressing his palms to the glass window across from the apartment door. Through it, he could see the city glowing, alive and indifferent. His reflection stared back hollow eyes, stubble shadowing his jaw. A man unrecognizable from the one who once stood on brightly lit stages. His articles sparking movements, his name whispered in admiration. Now, he was a ghost haunting his own life. Inside, Elena busied herself with Noah's blanket, smoothing it though it was already neat. Her hands trembled. She hated that her children had seen him, that Amelia's eyes had lingered with questions she couldn't answer. "Mum." Amelia's voice was soft. The girl stood at the bedroom doorway, her brother asleep behind her. "That was Dad, wasn't it?" Elena's throat tightened. "Go back to bed, Amelia." But the girl hesitated, frowning. "Why didn't you let him in?" Elena forced her voice steady. "Because sometimes letting someone in does more harm than keeping them out." Amelia didn't argue, but the hurt in her eyes was unmistakable. She retreated, closing the door with a quiet click. Elena slumped into the couch, burying her face in her hands. Images assaulted her Ryan at the piano years ago, coaxing melodies that wrapped around her heart. Ryan drunk, slamming the door after another argument. Ryan's silence when she begged for the truth, his eyes always somewhere far away. The sound of glass breaking echoed in her mind. That was what their love had been, fragile, beautiful, and doomed to shatter under the weight of lies. Down in the street, Ryan lit a cigarette with shaky hands. He didn't smoke often anymore, his lungs couldn't take it. But tonight the burn steadied him. He glanced up, searching for the 12th floor window. Through the glass, he saw movement. Amelia, silhouetted against the light, staring out at the city. Their eyes didn't meet. She couldn't see him clearly from this distance. But for a moment, Ryan felt like a father again, watching over her from below, wishing he could bridge the walls between them. The train roared past, its reflection slicing across the glass like a fracture. Ryan whispered into the night, words no one could hear. "I'll find a way back. I have to." And above him, in the apartment, sealed tight, Elena pressed her hand against the window, her reflection overlapping Amelia's. She whispered too, though only the glass listened, "Don't you dare come back and break us again." The city swallowed both vows, carrying them into the dark. 10 years earlier, the Carters had lived in a different apartment, smaller, shabbier, but filled with light and laughter. Back then, Elena was still in law school, surviving on instant noodles and endless case studies, while Ryan was the rising star of Chicago journalism. His articles had toppled corrupt officials. His name carried weight in city newsrooms, and his phone buzzed constantly with leads. But what Elena remembered most wasn't the accolades or the chaos. It was the nights when Ryan would sit at the piano in the corner of their cramped living room, fingers gliding across chipped keys, coaxing melodies that wrapped around her like a promise. He never played for audiences, then only for her. "You make the world louder," she once teased, leaning against the doorway as his music filled the room. "And you," Ryan replied without looking up, "make it bearable." Their love had been fierce, young, burning with the certainty that nothing could break them. When Elena became pregnant with Amelia, they were scared but determined. Ryan swore he would be the kind of father he never had. Elena believed him, but the cracks began small. Missed dinners, empty promises, Ryan chasing a story while Elena sat alone with their newborn. She told herself it was temporary, that every relationship had growing pains. Then came the night he stumbled home, reeking of whiskey, his tie askew, eyes bloodshot. Elena had been waiting with Amelia in her arms, exhaustion written across her face. "Where were you?" she demanded, voice trembling. "Working," Ryan muttered, dropping onto the couch. "Working." She laughed bitterly. At 2 a.m, smelling like a bar. He didn't answer. His silence was worse than lies. Over time, silence became their third companion. Meals eaten in quiet, nights spent back to back in bed, arguments cut short when Noah was born 2 years later. Ryan's absences grew longer, his explanations thinner, and yet Elena could never fully stop loving him. That was the cruelty of it, because every now and then he'd look at her with the same fire from their early days, or he'd play a melody on the piano that pulled tears from her eyes. Those moments kept her hoping, kept her fighting for a man who was slipping further into shadows. Then, without warning, he disappeared. No note, no phone call. Just gone. The silence after that was louder than any storm. Elena never forgot the night she realized Ryan was truly gone. Amelia was only 4, curled up on the couch with a fever, her small body trembling in Elena's arms. The rain lashed against the windows, the city outside indifferent to her panic. She called Ryan again and again, each ring echoing into emptiness. When the fever finally broke at dawn, exhaustion pulled her to the floor beside the couch. That was when she understood. She was alone. From that day, Elena built her walls higher, piece by piece, to Amelia. She said only that her father had worked far away, to Noah. Born into a world where Ryan was already absent, she told nothing at all. Silence became her armor. If the children asked, she deflected. If memories threatened, she buried them. But silence is fragile. Children notice cracks adults try to hide. Amelia grew old enough to remember his face, his laugh, the piano. And though she never said it aloud, Elena saw the question in her daughter's eyes. Why did he leave us? Meanwhile, Ryan lived as a shadow. His career imploded after a disastrous article, sources fabricated, facts twisted. He claimed he'd been set up, but no one cared. His reputation crumbled overnight. Desperate, he turned to alcohol, convincing himself it dulled the guilt. He drifted through cheap motels and second-hand bars, carrying only 2 things: a notebook filled with unfinished investigations, and a photograph of Amelia as a toddler, smiling with frosting on her cheeks. He would stare at it when the guilt became unbearable, when he wondered if she still remembered him at all. The years blurred. He told himself he was protecting them by staying away, that the enemies he'd angered might harm Elena and the kids if he returned. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was too ashamed, too afraid to face the family he had failed. Now, standing in the present, Ryan looked at the 12th floor window glowing faintly above the street. He had finally found the courage or the desperation to return. But what if it was too late? Inside the apartment, Elena folded laundry with mechanical precision, her hands steady while her mind replayed the past like broken film reels. Every smile, every fight, every moment of silence. She paused when Amelia wandered out, carrying her sketchbook. The girl hesitated, then climbed onto the couch beside her mother. "Mum," Amelia asked softly, "did you ever love Dad?" Elena's breath caught. The question, simple yet sharp, pierced straight through her armor. She set the laundry aside and pulled Amelia close, kissing the top of her head. "Yes," Elena whispered. "I loved him very much." Amelia's eyes searched hers. "Then why does it feel like he's still here, even when he's not?" Elena held her tighter, unable to answer, because that was the cruelest truth, even in silence. Ryan's shadow lived with them, woven into every memory, every note of the silent piano that still stood in the corner of their living room and outside. Ryan lit another cigarette, staring up through the glass walls that separated him from the life he had lost. The old upright piano stood in the corner of the living room, gathering dust. Its surface was scratched, the varnish peeling, and a few keys stuck whenever pressed too hard. For years, it had been nothing more than furniture, a silent reminder of the man who once filled their home with music. One Saturday morning, Amelia dragged a chair over and sat before it. Her small hands hovered over the keys. She had never been taught, but something in her heart urged her to try. She pressed a note, then another. The sound was uneven, broken but alive. Noah toddled over, clutching his toy truck. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Playing," Amelia replied, brow furrowed. She pressed a short melody she had heard once on TV, halting but recognizable. Noah grinned. "It sounds funny. It sounds like Dad," Amelia whispered without thinking. Her words startled even herself. She glanced toward the hallway, half expecting her mother to appear and scold her. But Elena was at the sink, her movements rigid. She hadn't turned around, yet Amelia knew she was listening. That evening, Elena found Amelia sketching in her notebook. The page showed a piano, a girl sitting before it, and a shadowy figure standing nearby. "Why do you keep drawing that?" Elena asked softly. Amelia shrugged, not meeting her eyes. "Because when I play, it feels like he's listening." Elena's heart clenched. She wanted to tear the sketch from the book, to tell her daughter to stop chasing ghosts. But she couldn't, because in the quiet hours, when Amelia's fingers fumbled across the keys, Elena felt it too, that haunting presence. Like Ryan's soul pressed into the wood and strings, waiting to be heard. Late that night, when the children were asleep, Elena sat at the piano. She hadn't touched it in years. Her fingers trembled as they brushed the keys, memories flooding back, Ryan's laughter, the way he would coax her into singing along, the warmth of those rare moments when the world outside didn't exist. She pressed a single note. It rang out, lonely, fragile. Behind her, a knock echoed on the door. Her body stiffened. She didn't need to look to know who it was. "Elena," Ryan's muffled voice called, low, pleading. I heard the piano." Elena's chest ached. She pressed her hand to the keys, silencing them. She didn't move, didn't answer. On the other side of the door, Ryan leaned against the wall, closing his eyes. The faint echo of that one note still lingered in his mind. For him, it wasn't just sound, it was hope. The following week, Amelia grew bolder with the piano. Every afternoon after school, she would sit on the wobbly bench and try new combinations of notes. The sounds were clumsy, uneven, but her persistence was unshakable. Noah would clap at the end of each performance, no matter how chaotic. One evening, Elena entered the living room to find Amelia carefully copying music notes from an old, torn sheet that had been left inside the bench. Elena froze. It was Ryan's handwriting, scrawled in pencil. He had once been composing something, abandoned. "Where did you get that?" Elena demanded. Voice sharp, Amelia flinched. "It was inside the piano. I just wanted to try." Elena snatched the sheet, staring at the faded notes. Her chest tightened with memories. It was the piece Ryan had played the night they promised each other forever. She slammed the sheet shut and shoved it back into the bench. "Don't touch that again," she said, harsher than intended. Amelia's eyes glistened. "Why, it's just music." Elena swallowed, forcing her tone flat. "Because some things are better left silent." That night, Amelia lay awake, hugging her sketchbook. Her drawings had changed. Now, the shadowy figure beside the piano was clearer, her father's face slowly emerging in lines and shading outside. Ryan lingered in the alley, staring up at the window. Through the thin curtains, he could see the outline of Amelia at the piano, her small hands moving. His throat tightened. He wanted to shout encouragement, to rush up and guide her fingers, to tell her she had his gift, but his body refused. His shame anchored him to the shadows. Instead, he pulled a small notebook from his pocket and scribbled furiously. Melodies, fragments of lyrics, half-formed promises. His fingers smudged the ink. If I can't be inside, I'll give her something from out here. The next day, Amelia found a folded piece of paper slipped under the door. It was a page of music, hastily written, but clear. At the bottom, 3 words, "For my daughter." She stared at it, heart pounding. She didn't tell her mother. She just sat at the piano, placed the sheet on the stand, and began to play. The melody was simple, tender, like a lullaby wrapped in sorrow. She stumbled over the notes, but even broken, the music carried something pure. In the hallway, Ryan closed his eyes, listening. A tear traced his cheek. For the first time in years, the sound of his family's home was not silence, it was music. And for Elena, standing unseen in the kitchen doorway, it was a dagger, because she recognized the handwriting instantly. Ryan had found his way back in, not through the door, but through the piano. Amelia couldn't stop humming the melody. She played it again and again on the piano, stumbling less each time, her small fingers growing surer. Noah danced in circles around the room, laughing, "Play it again, Mia." But Elena's stomach twisted each time the notes rang out. That song was Ryan, his fingerprints in every chord, his ghost in every pause. She wanted to slam the lid shut, to silence the music before it clawed open every wound she had spent years sealing. One evening, after Amelia finished a shaky rendition, Elena snapped, "Enough. No more piano tonight." Amelia turned, startled. "But Mum, I almost got it right this time." Elena's voice was sharper than she meant. "I said enough." The hurt in her daughter's eyes made Elena's chest ache, but she couldn't take the words back. Amelia closed the lid gently, her shoulders slumping. She picked up her sketchbook and retreated to her room without another word. Later that night, Elena found the sketchbook lying open on the bed. The drawing stopped her cold. Amelia at the piano, Noah beside her, and behind them, Ryan, drawn in dark lines, smiling faintly. Elena's hands trembled as she closed the book. The glass walls she had built were cracking on. Her daughter was chipping at them, note by note. The next morning, as Elena prepared breakfast, Amelia asked quietly, "Mum, if I play good enough, will Dad come back?" The question sliced through her like broken glass. She forced herself to keep her voice steady. "Your father isn't coming back, Amelia." Amelia frowned. "But someone left that music for me. I know it was him." Elena froze, spatula hovering above the pan. Her daughter's eyes were too sharp to knowing. "Amelia," she said slowly, "sometimes people leave things behind because that's all they can give. It doesn't mean they can stay." Amelia didn't answer. She just stared at her plate, shoulders hunched, the silence louder than any argument. And outside the apartment, Ryan stood in the alley again, clutching his notebook to his chest. He could feel the cracks forming, could sense the battle inside those walls of glass. But he didn't know if he was strong enough to break through, or if doing so would shatter them completely. That afternoon, Amelia came home from school to find another folded sheet slipped under the door. She unfolded it quickly, heart racing. More notes, another melody, this one brighter, almost playful. At the bottom, the same 3 words. "For my daughter." She sat at the piano immediately, fingers eager. The sound filled the small apartment, light and dancing, so unlike the heavy silence that usually pressed on the walls. Noah clapped along, laughing with delight. But Elena returned earlier than expected. The moment she saw the sheet music on the stand, her chest went tight. She stormed across the room, yanking it away. "Where did you get this?" she demanded. Amelia froze. It was under the door. Elena's hands shook. "He's been here." Before Amelia could speak, a knock rattled the door. Elena's pulse spiked. She didn't need to ask who it was. She swung it open and there he was. "Ryan, stop it." Elena snapped, shoving the sheet music against his chest. "You don't get to haunt us with your songs," Amelia gasped, stepping forward. "Dad," the word froze everyone. Ryan's eyes widened, glistening. He hadn't heard her call him that in years, not since she was small enough to fit in his arms. "Yes, Mia," he whispered, voice breaking. "It's me." Elena's fury ignited. "Don't you dare speak to her like you belong here." Amelia looked between them, confusion clouding her face. "Mum, why can't he stay?" "He's my dad. He's Noah's dad too." "No." Elena's voice cracked, raw. "You don't know what he's done. You don't know how many nights he left us alone, how many times he chose silence over us." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. She turned to Ryan, her voice trembling. "Is that true?" Ryan swallowed hard, shame pressing on him like a weight. "Yes, I failed. I failed both of you, but I never stopped loving you." Elena's chest heaved. She wanted to push him out, to lock the door forever. But Amelia's gaze hurt, pleading stopped her cold. Noah peeked out from the bedroom, clutching his toy. His small voice broke the silence. Are we a family again?" Elena felt the glass walls around her splintering, each word, each tear another fracture. She couldn't breathe. "Get out," she whispered to Ryan, her hand shaking on the doorknob. "Before you break them too." Ryan hesitated, eyes locked on Amelia, then on Noah. Finally, he stepped back, letting the door slam shut between them. Inside, Amelia's sobs filled the apartment. Elena sank against the door, trembling. And outside, Ryan stood in the hall, fists clenched, whispering into the silence, "I'll prove it. I'll find a way back in." The week that followed was unbearable. Elena moved through her days with the rigid precision of survival work. Dinner, bedtime routines, while inside, her chest roared with chaos. Every knock on the door, every shadow in the hallway made her pulse spike. Ryan had crossed the threshold once. What was stopping him from doing it again? Amelia was quieter, withdrawn. She played the piano less, choosing instead to draw for hours on end. Her sketchbook filled with darker lines, broken glass, shadowy figures, faceless men looming behind her father's outline. Elena worried but didn't know how to reach her. One night, Amelia approached her mother hesitantly. "Mum, why did Dad really leave?" Elena stiffened. "I told you. He chose his career, his lies, over us." Amelia's brow furrowed. "But what if he didn't? What if something else happened?" The words chilled Elena. "Where did you hear that?" Amelia hesitated, then pulled out a page torn from Ryan's notebook notes and scribbles. Names and dates scrawled in messy ink. She had found it folded inside the last sheet of music he slipped under the door. "He wanted me to give this to you," Amelia whispered. Elena's hands shook as she read. It wasn't just random writing, it was an investigation. Dates of secret meetings, initials of powerful men, references to shipments and missing girls. Her stomach lurched. This was bigger than journalism. It was dangerous. Amelia, Elena said sharply, shoving the paper into a drawer. You never touch this again. Do you understand? But Mum, promise me. Amelia nodded reluctantly, though fear clouded her eyes. That night, after putting the children to bed, Elena sat at the kitchen table, staring at the paper. Pieces of memory surfaced: Ryan's distant eyes, his long absences, the paranoia in his voice before he vanished. What if he hadn't left because of betrayal? What if he had left because someone forced him to? Her heart ached, but anger burned hotter. If it were true, why hadn't he trusted her? Why hadn't he told her, instead of letting her drown in silence? A sudden knock jolted her. This time it wasn't Ryan. A uniformed officer stood in the hall, hat tucked under his arm. Elena Carter, he asked. We need to speak with you. It's about Ryan. Elena's blood ran cold. Elena's grip on the doorknob tightened. What about Ryan? Her voice cracked despite her attempt at control. The officer glanced down the hallway before lowering his voice. We believe he's involved in an ongoing investigation. He was working undercover years ago, digging into a trafficking ring tied to several high-profile figures. He went off the grid. For his safety, or maybe for yours. Elena's knees buckled. She clutched the doorframe. You're telling me he disappeared to protect us? The officer's gaze was steady. Maybe, but people like the ones he crossed, they don't forgive. If he's come back, all of you might be in danger. Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to slam the door, to deny every word. But the paper in her drawer, Ryan's frantic notes, had all aligned, as if summoned. Footsteps echoed at the far end of the hall. Ryan appeared, breathless, eyes locking with Elena's. The officer stiffened. Stone, you shouldn't be here. I had no choice, Ryan said, his voice raw. They found me, and now they'll come for her. For the kids. Elena's fury boiled over. You think you can show up after years, dump danger on our doorstep, and call it love? Ryan flinched. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I thought staying away would save you, save me. Her voice rose, trembling. Do you know what it's like to raise 2 children alone? To explain your absence with lies because the truth was unbearable. From the bedroom doorway, Amelia's small voice cut through the storm. Stop yelling. Both parents froze. Amelia stood clutching Noah's hand, her face pale. You keep saying you're protecting us, but all I see is secrets. I don't want secrets. I just want my dad to stay, and I want Mum to stop crying. Tears blurred Elena's vision. She reached out, but Amelia stepped back, pulling Noah behind her like a shield. The fracture lines in their family were no longer hidden. They were carved deep, visible to all. The officer cleared his throat, tension thick in the air. Stone, you need to decide. Either you go back into hiding, or you bring them with you, because staying apart won't protect them anymore. Ryan's chest heaved, his eyes darting between Elena and the children. Every choice was a blade. Elena's heart pounded. For years she had built walls of anger to survive. Now the truth hammered against them, threatening to break her in ways she wasn't sure she could bear. And for the first time in years, Ryan spoke the words he had buried. I never stopped loving you. But if you can't forgive me, at least let me keep them safe. Elena's tears spilled over. For Amelia and Noah, the reflection of family was shattered, jagged, dangerous, but still glimmering with pieces of something worth saving. The apartment felt like a battlefield the night after the officer's visit. Elena sat at the kitchen table, her head in her hands, Ryan pacing restlessly by the window, and Amelia curled up on the couch with Noah asleep in her lap. No one spoke, but the air was heavy with words unsaid. At last, Elena lifted her head. Her eyes were swollen from tears, but her voice was steady. "You can't stay here, Ryan. If what the officer said is true, being near us will only put the kids in danger." Ryan's jaw tightened. "If I leave again, they'll still be in danger. Those men, they don't forgive loose ends. The only way to protect you is to face them head on." Elena laughed bitterly. "That's what you've been doing all these years, isn't it? Fighting shadows while your family was left bleeding in the light." He flinched, but didn't argue. Instead, he looked toward Amelia. "I can't change what I did, but I can change what happens next. I won't run anymore." Amelia met his eyes, torn between anger and longing. "If you go fight them, will you come back?" Ryan hesitated. He wanted to promise yes. He wanted to swear it, but the truth pressed heavy on his tongue. "I'll try," he whispered. Elena stood, fists trembling. "You don't get to gamble with her heart again." Before he could respond, a sudden crash outside made them all jump. Glass shattered, followed by hurried footsteps retreating into the night. Ryan rushed to the window. Shards lay scattered across the fire escape, and spray-painted on the brick wall was a single word: "Stay silent." Elena's face went pale. "They've found us." Ryan's chest heaved. Then it's too late to hide. He turned back to his family, eyes fierce, voice low. "You have a choice, Elena. Either trust me to fight this, or let them destroy us piece by piece." Elena's breath shook. Every instinct screamed to protect her children by pushing him away. But part of her knew if Ryan left now, this time he might never return. And in the middle of the storm, Amelia's small, trembling voice cut through. "Please, just don't disappear again." The following night, Ryan prepared to leave. He packed little, just the notebook full of names and evidence, a worn jacket, and the determination carved into his bones. Elena stood by the door, arms crossed, her face a war zone of anger and fear. "You'll get yourself killed," she whispered. "Maybe," Ryan admitted. "But if I don't try, they'll come for you. For the kids. I can't let that happen." Amelia clutched his sleeve, tears streaming down her face. "Don't go. Please, Dad. Just stay. We can hide. We can run." Ryan knelt, pulling her close. "I wish it were that simple, Mia. But monsters don't stop chasing when you run. Sometimes you have to turn and face them." Noah stirred from sleep, padding into the room with his toy clutched tight. His sleepy voice broke the silence. "Daddy." Ryan's chest cracked open. He kissed the boy's head, then Amelia's, holding them as if trying to memorize their weight, their warmth. "Whatever happens, remember this: I love you." More than anything, Elena's hands trembled, torn between pushing him out and pulling him back. In the end, all she could say was, "If you walk out that door, don't you dare vanish into silence again. Either come back, or don't come at all." Ryan met her eyes, guilt and devotion warring inside him. He touched her cheek lightly, the ghost of the man she once loved flickering through. "I'll come back, or I'll die trying." And then he was gone, swallowed by the night. Hours bled into days. No word, no knock at the door, only silence and the echo of his promise. One morning, the officer returned. His face was grave. He handed Elena an envelope-oriented notebook, blood-stained at the edges. He exposed them. The officer said softly, "Because of him, dozens of girls were freed. The ring is broken, but he didn't make it." Elena's knees buckled, tears blinding her. Amelia screamed, clinging to her brother. The world shattered again, but this time with no illusions left to hold on to. Days later, Amelia sat at the piano, the blood-stained notebook beside her. She played the melody Ryan had written, the first one, the lullaby full of sorrow and hope. Her small hands trembled, but the sound carried strength beyond her years. Elena stood in the doorway, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She realized then that Ryan's silence had finally broken not with words, but with music, with sacrifice, with love etched into every note. And though their family was forever scarred, a fragile thread of hope remained. Because, as Amelia played, Noah hummed along, and Elena felt the ghost of Ryan's arms around them, as if he was still there, guiding, protecting, loving. The glass walls had shattered, but through the cracks, light found its way in. 5 years later, the world had shifted. The apartment was still small, still modest, but its walls no longer felt like a cage. Instead, they held laughter, drawings taped crookedly to the fridge, and the soft echo of piano keys played daily. Amelia was 12 now, taller, her fingers longer, more graceful on the keys. Noah, at 7, sat cross-legged on the floor, humming every tune his sister practiced, sometimes clapping off beat, sometimes joining with his tiny toy drum. Elena sat in the armchair, watching them with a quiet pride and a quiet ache. The space Ryan once haunted was now filled with his absence, but also with the life he had given back to them. That evening, Amelia dressed in a simple navy dress, clutching her sheet music nervously. It was her first recital at the community center. Elena braided her daughter's hair slowly, carefully, like she used to when Amelia was little. "Are you ready?" Elena asked softly. Amelia nodded, her voice steady though her eyes shone. "This one's for him." When the recital began, the small hall was filled with parents and neighbors. Elena sat in the front row with Noah leaning against her side. When Amelia stepped onto the stage, the lights washed over her, making her look older. Braver, she sat at the piano, placed her hands on the keys, and began to play. The melody was the same lullaby Ryan had once scribbled on torn paper, the one that carried sorrow and hope in equal measure. But now, under Amelia's hands, it had grown. She had filled the spaces with her own flourishes, her own heartbeat. It was no longer just his song, it was theirs. The audience was silent, captivated. Elena's tears fell freely as the notes wrapped around her, pulling her back to nights of broken glass and whispered promises. But instead of shattering her, the music rebuilt her. Note by note, when the last chord faded, Amelia lifted her hands, and for a moment, the hall held its breath. Then applause erupted, thunderous and warm. Amelia bowed, her gaze searching for her mother's. When their eyes met, Elena mouthed the words, "He would be proud." Amelia smiled through her tears, and in that moment she felt it not the absence of her father, but his presence woven into every note, every heartbeat, every piece of music she carried forward. Backstage, Noah hugged her tightly. "That was awesome." Dad definitely heard it. Amelia ruffled his hair, laughing softly. Yeah, I think he did. Outside, the night sky stretched endlessly, the stars glowing faintly above the city. And though Ryan Stone was gone, his last note lingered in the piano's echo, in his children's laughter, and in the fragile, enduring hope of the family he had fought to protect. The silence was finally over.